Jenny Larkin. I'm here all the way from Connecticut to talk about my fabulous grandmother, Vonola Fairbanks Modine. I really appreciate the opportunity to come here and speak, and the Shoshone Museum Association for providing the opportunity to talk about the history and the heritage of this area. Without any further ado, let's go to the story. So Vonola Fairbanks was born on November 8th, which is, let me see, the anniversary on Tuesday. She would have been 116 years old on Tuesday in Annabella, Utah. She was the youngest daughter of Death Valley pioneers Celesta Ma and Ralph, also known as Dad Fairbanks. So her family were born into a Mormon family, but her dad decided to take the family and move to Ash Meadows. So her early childhood was spent there, where she lived with their family in a tent city at Fairbanks Springs, and that's right there, that's Vonola in the picture. And behind her you can see her mom is to my right, and her sister Betty is behind her. I'm not sure who some of the other people are, but that's in Ash Meadows in Fairbanks Springs. And today, Fairbanks Springs is part of the Ash Meadows National Wildlife Refuge, pretty close by, where if you haven't been there, it's really spectacular. You go there and they have this thing called Crystal Lake, where it's a huge body of water, and the color looks like something out of the Caribbean. And there are, miles of marsh grasses and greenery and a beautiful, beautiful visitor center where they have interactive displays and they talk about the history of the area. So if you haven't been there, you should really go check it out. So at Fairbanks Springs, Vonola's dad provided food and goods to miners and travelers in the area. Ma Fairbanks took care of the beds for renting, besides looking after the family needs in general. Vonola's sister Stella was little Vonola's caregiver and best friend. So Vonola was the youngest of about 11 children. I think there were 8 who survived to adulthood, and Zella was the youngest, and Vonola was the youngest, and Stella was about 8 years older, so she was kind of like, also like a mom to her. They spent their days in swimming holes, riding burros, and catching pupfish to feed the cat. Her brothers would play toss with Vonola as the ball, and life was great for that little girl. Her brothers were, some of their, Vern and Lee and Dave, and there were a lot of brothers. There were all the first children were brothers, and then the last 3 were girls: Betty, Stella, and Vonola. So they also traveled on shopping trips to the beach. And the following slide is an excerpt from Stella's diary. So this is Friday, April 12th, 1907, on a trip to Los Angeles. This morning we went down to the Santa Monica beach and ate our dinner to a Japanese restaurant. We had fish for dinner. Then we went down to the ocean, and Pa bought me and Vonola an inkstand, and Vonola and I picked up shells on the beach. There was lots of people in us swimming. The waves were rolling very high. We came down on a streetcar and we saw lots of very pretty buildings and some of the beautifulest flowers and houses you ever saw. We came back and I bought me a new skirt and jacket, and Vonola and me a new hat. Pa got Ma a watch, and we had ripe tomatoes. We ate our supper in the Nedick, and at 8 o'clock we took a car for the train to go home. We traveled all night long. And I want to think that picture may have been taken in Santa Monica during that visit, and they're wearing those hats that they bought. I don't know, but I don't have any corroboration on that, but that's what I like to think. So as with many of the towns out here at the time, the ore ran out and business dried up at Fairbanks Springs in 1908. The family tried to make a go of it in Greenwater, but when that failed, the family loaded up all of their belongings on 2 wagons and moved lock, stock, and barrel to Shoshone in the summer of Halley's Comet. And before you switch, it says Vern, Cleo, Mother, Vonola, and Donna. So this is Vern Fairbanks, his wife, Donna, holding baby, Cleo, holding baby Donna, And you'll see in the back is Ma Fairbanks, and then that's Vonola there, the little girl on the wagon. So when Vonola's family arrived in Shoshone, they lived under the mesquite trees. And a lot of this is from her diary. She tells this story. They lived under the mesquite trees until the houses were built. The kitchen and dining room were set up first. Ma cooked for the passengers and crew of the Tonopah and Tidewater Railroad, and Dad set up a store. Later on, a post office was added. Vonola soon made friends with a little Mexican girl, the first time in years that she had a playmate her own age. She learned Spanish from her new friend and spent many happy days together that summer. Stella turned 18 that year and could now marry her suitor, Charles Brown. So there was no school in Shoshone at the time. So in the fall, Vonola was sent to the Sisters of the Sacred Heart Convent School in San Bernardino. It was the first time she'd ever seen so many children in one place. After 2 years, she returned to Shoshone and life among the grown-ups, but it was soon time to return to boarding school. In about 1913, Vonola was sent to Fernley, Nevada to live with her sister, Betty, who was also Celeste, and Jack Lyle, and her younger cousin, Glenn. School was about a mile from the Lyle Ranch, a long walk twice a day, so Betty gave Vonola a burro, and after that, they rode to school. Now in this picture, I don't think that's a burro. What do you think? Looks like a horse to me, but again, I thought that is Vonola and Glenn. And my mom liked to remind me the pail that Vonola is holding is the type of lunch pails that people used to carry in those days. And you see it on the picture. It says Vonola and Glenn going to school in Fernley. So here is a picture of Vonola's class in Fernley, and this is where Vonola had her very first boyfriend. And his name was Victor McPartland. This is their class photo from 1914, and what's really easy about my grandmother's life is that because she was born in 1900, even though it was November, it was late in the year, every year you know how old she is. So if it's 1914, she was turning 14 that year, so it's pretty easy to keep track of how old she was. Victor and Vonola were inseparable for 3 years, and things were getting serious. So unfortunately, Victor's Catholic family was against him dating a Mormon. Her Uncle Jack thought it was time for Vonola to go back to Shoshone with a broken heart. This was around 1917. So back again in Shoshone, Vonola met a young man who had come to the area at age 14 with his brother Mort in search of his father, Dan Modine. Before long, 17-year-old Vonola was swept off her feet by a handsome 20-year-old Alex Modine. They were married on August 9, 1918 at Stella and Charles Brown's home in Tonopah, Nevada. The newlyweds then moved to Death Valley Junction, where he worked as a conductor on the Tonopah and Tidewater. So how many people here have been to Death Valley Junction? I hope a lot of you. Another great place, a lot of history there. I know that there's some new things, popping up there. They've got an opera house, and so again, another really great place in the area to visit. So here's a picture of their lovely home in Death Valley Junction. So, I don't know where the house is. Maybe that's the house in the back. But, so after moving there, they started their family. Little Ralph Daniel Modine was born on July 26, 1920. He was named after both of his grandfathers, Ralph Fairbanks and Daniel Modine. So this is an excerpt from my grandmother's story that she wrote about when they finally got to move to a train car. She called it the moving to the boron car. In February of the winter of 1921, we had a chance to move across the tracks by the depot into a train car that was at one time a dining car. The name Boron was still on the side. About a third of it was a nice kitchen, with the rest being a long living room with big closets at each end. We slept on the screen porch at the side, which was covered with canvas in the wintertime. We had running water and a shower, but the privy was out back. Stell gave me her old hand washing machine she had in Tonopah. She had bought a new gasoline motor-driven one for their use in Shoshone. I didn't even know they had gasoline-powered washing machines. That sounds pretty cool. Also dangerous. Like, I think it would have to be outside. This was a luxury for me, and I loved to wash and hang the clothes on the line with the wind blowing them dry. Usually, by the time the last ones were hung up, the first ones were dry, as we had a lot of wind in Death Valley Junction. Some days it blew up the valley and some days down, but always wind. I can still hear the clothes whipping and the canvas flapping on the screen porch where we slept. Now, she wrote this book of remembrance when she was 75, so this is written from the perspective of looking back from a long time in the future. Now we had an extra bed for company. Grandpa Dan came quite often, and more too. He was working for the Santa Fe Railroad, living in Ludlow, California. Dan had some cattle he was running in the Greenwater country. He would stop by on his way back and forth from Tacoma to the cattle range. He rode a big gray white horse, and both of them would be so tired when they got to our place, Dan would just sit and rest and read for a couple of days, hardly saying a word, then leave as quietly and suddenly as he had come. And on November 27th, 1921, another November day, Wilder Rivard Modine was born. With two babies, Alex began taking care of Ralph while Vonola took care of baby Wilder. And before long, the children became yours and mine.
That's sweet.
About this time, they bought their first car, a 1921 Ford, for $200 cash. It had a brass radiator, crank starter, and curtains to put up when the weather was bad. They used it to go to swimming parties at Tacoma Hot Springs and Ash Meadows, picnics and cookouts at Eagle Mountain, and family visits to Shoshone. This is, by the way, this is Vonola in Tacoma Hot Springs at the time. And this is just a picture of the young family, the young growing family. There's Vonola with their car, and Alex holding baby Wilder and little Ralph in front in 1924. Alex's dad, Dan Modine, left his wife and children in Oklahoma around 1910 to seek his fortune in California. He was now a rancher at his self-named Modine Meadows Ranch along the Amargosa River in Tacoma, with access via the railroad that ran through the 120 acres. In the spring of 1923, Dan and his sons pooled their resources and purchased adjacent China Ranch as a business venture for $5,000. So here's a picture you can see again. That's Vonola holding Wilder. And in the front, the little boy in front is Ralph, and actually Alex Modine is standing in the back. I'm not exactly sure who some of the other people are, but I think that could be Bernice might be in there. Anyway, I'm not exactly sure who some of the people are, but maybe some people here can help identify them. So at China Ranch, Alex resigned from his job on the Death Valley Railroad. The Modines packed their belongings and they launched out on a new adventure with high hopes and enthusiasm for the future. Dan raised the cattle, Vonola and Alex farmed and ran the place, and Mort worked at the Santa Fe Railroad to earn the cash to get started. So it's interesting how life here was all about trying to survive, railroads, mining, working under, again, here's their lovely home at China Ranch, which was much more substantial than the one that they had at, certainly more than a railroad car at Death Valley Junction. So the house at China Ranch was made of poured mud, I guess also adobe, I guess you would call it, and had 3 big rooms and a screen porch for summer sleeping with running water and an outhouse in back. There was a wash tub for bathing if they didn't stop at the Tacoma Hot Springs for a dip. There was livestock, including mules, a horse, and 25 hogs that they raised and sold for meat. and they bought 500 baby chicks from Los Angeles to put in a chicken coop. They purchased a milking cow from the Pacific Coast Borax Company ranch in Beatty. In the first year, they were able to collect about 300 flats of figs from the 13 fig trees that had been planted there years before. Vonola ordered date seeds from a catalog and planted them in 2 rows where she planned to build her dream home one day. Now, does anyone know, has anyone been and seen these rows of date palms? So this is China Ranch today. So these are the dates that she planted back when she first moved there in 1923. And so, but unfortunately, Brian Brown and Bonnie Brown built their home at the end of this row of dates, which was kind of like they fulfilled her her dream and built a dream home there. So unfortunately, this was not to be. On May 20th, 1924, Vonola was pregnant with morning sickness, and it was a challenge to chase after 2 busy little boys. Ralph, now 4, and Wilder 2. Alex was up early, irrigating the garden and plowing a new plot of ground. Vonola left the house with the 2 little boys to help him in the field. They opened the gate, stopped by the bridge to look at the frogs, say hello to the calf, and then off to the chicken house. Now this, the rest of this is a quote from her story. The chicken house had a high door. Alex had never made steps, so it was quite a climb to get in. We played with the little chicks for a while, knowing all the time I should hurry as Alex was waiting for me. I jumped down and lifted Wilder down, but Ralph wouldn't come. He loved the chickens. As you can see, that's Ralph playing with the chickens. I coaxed and persuaded, and then in desperation, I playfully grabbed him and swung him down. Ralph was very insulted and unhappy to be forced and would not go along with me. Even a little bird nest we had been watching in the willows failed to interest him. I was so aggravated at his actions, I said, "Okay, I'll go along to see the birds." I expected them to follow, or thought they would go back to the house with Mrs. Bunnell. Instead of going to the house, they had found some matches, gone into the old cellar and built a fire. Ralph must have been on the side towards the back, and Wilder towards the front. Ralph crawled away back in the corner to get away from the fire, and Wilder came out the door. I had hardly reached the garden, and Alex, when I looked back for the children, but instead I saw billowing smoke climbing into the sky. One look, and Alex dropped the lines and started to run as fast as he could. I turned back running when I could, but I was afraid I would faint from dizziness. When I got back to the house, Mrs. Bunnell and Alex were carrying a tub of water towards the fire, which I could see was in the cellar. When I saw Wilder, I asked him where his brother was. He pointed to the fire and said, "In there." Alex could see the water was a losing game, so he wrapped himself in a wet quilt and was going in. I begged him not to go in there, for I could see he could never make it. There was nothing to do now but face facts and do the next best thing. We decided Alex would go to the talc mine and get burned, and I would go to Acme and call Shoshone from the railroad phone on a pole. I told Stell that Ralph had been burned. I couldn't tell her he was dead. Within an hour, all the men were down from the mine. Stell and Charlie were there with all kinds of burn medicine. Such a sad, helpless group. Alex, Wilder, and I went back to Shoshone with Stell and Charlie. Vern took charge of putting out the rest of the fire and finding the little body. And I apologize, there was a photo I was going to put in here, but the internet didn't work today, so. By the time we got to Shoshone, I was beginning to realize what had happened. Alex wandered around in a daze, and I was in shock. I stayed in Stell's house, barely able to move. I heard Vern's car drive in, and I knew they had brought the precious little body and put it in a cabin by the store. I heard hammering and sawing, and I knew Frank Mellows was building a casket. I knew they were looking for material to make it nice and soft and clean. I knew all of this, but I couldn't move or be any comfort to Alex. About 5 o'clock, Dad came in with his suit on. It took a very special occasion for him to dress up. I knew they were planning a service of some kind. Mother had left for vacation to Utah the day before. They wanted to have her come back, but she could do nothing. and why ruin her trip? By sundown that same night, our precious little one was gone, his little body buried on the hillside in back of the house where I was sick and grieving, barely able to move. Everyone was so shocked and sad. There was a hush over the whole place. But what could anyone say? We stayed that night in Shoshone until sundown the next day. Every move was made in the cool of the day in the desert in the summer. Stella wanted us to stay a few days more, but even though I dreaded to go back, I just wanted to go home and be alone. Only those who have known such sorrow can really know what it's like to pick up the threads and try to live again. Wilder was too small to know what had happened, but he too was lonely. So, again, you realize that, so much was driven by it. It was just being practical and survival, and there wasn't time for, really grieving and weeping, and you just had to go on and keep going. So that's what everyone did. Our third baby was due about the middle of December. We decided to go to Santa Paula this time. My dear, sweet mother, always ready to help, was going to be with me in Wilder to await the baby's arrival. Alex took us down in the old Model T, with Mother coming later. Nola Jo Modine was born on December 10th, 1924. So this place, this is, again, another quote, "This place could never be the same again. It had lost its charm for me. Everything was falling apart, and Vonola decided to take the bull by the horns." Oh no, actually I wrote this, sorry. By the horns, and do something about the whole mess. In November, she took a 5-gallon can of coal oil, poured it on the kitchen floor, torched a match to it, and left with Wilder and baby Nola Jo. The house burned to the ground with everything except their clothes hanging out to dry. Alex was sick about the fire. I am sure, and this is her quote, "I'm sure he or no one else ever suspected that I would do such a thing. We headed to Shoshone to find comfort and help. I should have felt guilty, but I did not." So, Alex and Vonola left the desert and moved to Santa Paula with Wilder and Nola Jo, and Mark Alexander was born in 1926. Alice got a job with Texaco, and Vonola kept house. When the Depression hit, money was short, and Vonola took in washing to make extra cash. The Modines were lucky because they had an orchard, chickens, and you can see they had a cow from Uncle. That was a calf, but again, they were among some of the more fortunate people during the Depression. Ma Fairbanks, suffering from diabetes, moved in with the Modines after she became too fragile for Ralph to care for in the desert. Santa Paula became a new gathering place for Vonola's family as they came to visit or just passed through. And you can see that's Betty up there on the right. And Nola, actually that's Nola and Mark to the left. And I love the hat that Mark is wearing. It's so typical. It looks like from those Our Gang comedies that you see on TV. And it had like little bottle caps, squeezed into it. So Vonola also continued to return to Shoshone and Baker for Thanksgiving and family reunions, but she wouldn't return to China Ranch again for over 60 years. And you can see here is a nice little reunion somewhere in California in 1933, and that's my mom holding the sign with her mom behind her. Ralph is to Vonola's right, and there's Stella, you can see Charles Brown, and this is Shorty Harris is up there as well, to Stella's right. And again, maybe some of you recognize some of these other people, but it's a pretty well-known photo. Anybody? Okay. So Ralph joined Celeste at the Modine home in Santa Paula and was beside her when she died on May 28, 1938. To tell it in his own words, "I looked over and she was deader in hell." My mom will never forget that. Like she was just, you can just imagine. But that's a great picture of them at Santa Paula. As the children grew, Vonola became restless with life in a small town, and she continued to seek answers about life and death by investigating numerous religions. Alex continued to work and support the family, but they grew apart, having never really recovered from the loss of little Ralph. So again, I don't know how many of you have known someone or had experience with the death in the family. When a lot of times there's guilt and there's blame and there's it's the loss and not knowing how to deal with it. And again, in those days, everyone just had to move on and continue going. And so I don't think anyone really properly grieved, and it really did impact the entire family. My mom became an entertainer, and I because she was, imagine a little girl born into that sad family. I think she just wanted people to smile, and she tried to make them laugh. And Wilder felt guilty his whole life, because even though he didn't quite remember what happened, he knew that his brother had died and there was a horrible tragedy, and he had survivor's guilt. And so in searching for answers, Vonola really just became somewhat detached from her family and life in Santa Paula, and she spent a lot of time literally going on pilgrimages to, investigate these, a lot of strange religions. My mom told me about Amy Semple McPherson, and she studied OWASP. She went to the Rosicrucians, again, searching for answers about life and death. Vonola invested in Nola's early talent for singing by working side jobs to provide money for singing and dancing lessons. In 1942, they moved to Hollywood to pursue Nola's career. And you can see here, this is my mom. She did a couple little things, but this was her first big gig with the Sonia Henney Ice Show. And the funny thing is, that's Frank Torella with her, and he actually looked her up a couple of years ago and came and visited. So, he's still around. He lives in Texas, and but that's the two of them back in about 1942. Oh, and with conflicting emotions, Vonola and Alex eventually divorced because she moved away. Wilder was old enough to enlist in the Air Force, and he became a B-17 pilot in World War II. I also wanted to point out the car that he's standing next to is called a Bantam, and it was one of the very first four-wheel drive cars imported into the United States. It was like before Jeeps and other things. And my grandmother used to brag about the fact that she always loved cars. It was amazing, and she drove from a very early age. In fact, she taught my grandfather to drive, and she drove Dad Fairbanks around because he couldn't drive. And so I just wanted to point out that to any car enthusiast, that's kind of a rare car that Wilder is standing in front of. And then Mark joined the Merchant Marines as soon as he was old enough. And again, you see that was obviously fun times at some kind of probably at Venice or Santa Monica Beach. It was around that time that Vonola changed her name to Zella. In Hollywood, she opened a boarding house and worked as a butcher. Her dad moved to a nursing home on Hollywood Boulevard, where he lived until his death on October 3rd, 1943. He was buried alongside Celeste in Santa Paula. In 1946, Zella moved to New York, where Nola continued her career on Broadway. So she remained Nola's manager for a while. These are just pictures of this is after they moved to New York. That's my mom, on the cover of the Daily Mirror. And I just love that picture of my grandmother. She almost looks, glamorous in that picture. She was 55 in that picture. And then she worked for some of Manhattan's wealthiest families, living in luxury apartments with addresses on Park Avenue on the Upper East Side. And you can see her up there. She also managed people's affairs. So this was a woman named Mrs. Sticks, who she kind of ran the household for, and she lived on Park Avenue for quite a few years. And it was really fun visiting her as a little girl because it was just it was a beautiful place. Zella stayed in New York until she retired and moved to Connecticut with Nola. In 1973, she felt it was time for a change. And so she bought a nomad trailer, and cousin Deke Lowe, Celeste's husband, drove back east to pick her up and carry her to another new start in the West. And of course, this is Betty with her, and I assume that's in Baker, but I just like that picture, so. So Vonola spent time visiting family in Utah, Las Vegas, and California, and eventually settled next door to her son, Mark, in San Diego. She spent many happy years there, surrounded by family and friends. And you can see this was her mobile home in Coronado Palms, And this is her at the swap meet, which she had a booth for years where she made crocheted rugs that she sold. And this is Mark with his dog Pistol Pete. And he was the manager of the drive-in movie theater and the swap meet there. So this is one of my favorite pictures from those days. This was in 1978 when I was visiting there with my daughter Abby, who's the little baby there. So this is just 4 generations of our family in San Diego. And I was, again, very fortunate to get to spend a lot of time with my grandmother, and it's amazing. That now is like 38 years ago. So many of you may know the story, but I thought I would tell it. In fact, I thought I would just read this article because it tells it really well. This is Victor, if you don't recognize him, but let's start out here. So they're a real-life Romeo and Juliet who waited an incredible 64 years to become man and wife. They fell in love as teenagers, but way back in 1917, 16-year-old Zella Fairbanks, that's because now we're calling her Zella. Zella Fairbanks' parents forbade her to marry Victor McPartland, 19. Heartbroken, they went their separate ways, but a mutual friend kept the star-crossed lovers up to date on each other over the years, and family. After 2 world wars and 1 marriage apiece, Victor and Zella said, "I do," this past December 3rd. This was 1982. That would have been 1981. The McPartlands were students when they met in Fernley, Nevada. I was her first boyfriend, and she was my first girlfriend. After going together for 3 years, we planned on getting married. Victor, 84, recalled. But when Zella's parents heard the news, they moved her to California, and she soon married someone else. Victor joined the army and served in France during World War I. He came home to the shattering news that Zella had married and settled in Nevada, married and raised a family. Meanwhile, Zella got a divorce, and in 1946 she moved to New York City, where she worked as a nurse. She moved back to California in 1973. All those years, Helen Lauder, a school chum from Fernley, wrote newsy notes in her Christmas cards to both Zella and Victor. When Victor's wife died last year, Mrs. Lauder encouraged him to call Zella. "I was a little nervous at first," Victor admitted, "but once we started talking, all the years of separation just dropped away. That very night, Victor, who was visiting his son in California, met Zella for dinner." In fact, I happened to be visiting at the time, and I think it might have even been that time, and it was around one of my visits. I just realized it couldn't have been 1978, but it was one of those visits, and I actually picked him up at the bus station and drove them to dinner. And they were sitting in the back seat of the car, and he literally could not keep his hands off her. I was looking in the rearview mirror, and I was like, "Really?" Because of course, I'm like 20, and I'm going, 84? And he was like, he was, again, madly in love. It was really amazing. It was the first. I never forgot the man through all those years. He was the measure for every man I met in my life after him. At dinner, we held hands under the table the whole time. 2 months after the first phone call, the modern-day Juliet married her Romeo. Zella concluded, "No one is ever too old, and the gulf of time is never too great if 2 people are really in love and want to marry. We didn't marry for convenience or for money or for anything else. It was pure love." But, and now if we have another minute, I do have, so the next slides, I actually have the letters, the first 2 letters that they wrote to each other after meeting at dinner that night. So I transcribed them up, so I typed them up, they were handwritten. So this is from Victor, September 19th, 1981. "Dear Vonola, I'm at a loss for words. As I sit here writing to you again after all these years, for my thoughts are way ahead of my pen." What wonderful writing, by the way. They really knew how to write, because that's how people, communicated back in the day. "It seems as though I should be able to reach out and take you in my arms or feel your kisses that you so graciously gave after all these years, and I'm sure by now our friendship can never be anything but a love I've always had for you. In so many ways, we weren't strangers, as I thought we might have been, to overcome embarrassing moments, for I could hardly keep my hands off you from the moment I first saw you. I can attest to that. I'm glad I did get to see you in your comfortable home and doing so well. For being busy has mellowed your years and allowed happiness to dwell whatever you're doing. How I did enjoy meeting all of your family, and shall look forward to another evening of pleasant conversation and libation when I'm not leaving so soon, for really time is all we have, though 24 hours have never been a shorter day in my life. I'm sure that I shall look forward to our next meeting with pleasure, and until then, you will never know I love you if you don't know now. The best to you always, love and prayers, Victor. And this is her reply. Just a couple of days later, dear Victor, I too am at a loss for words as I answer your letter. 1 week today we were together here, and what a wonderful few hours. Not enough, but adequate to prove you are the same dear Victor grown up. Forgive me for not talking to you more when you said goodbye, when you called goodbye, because he was staying someplace, called goodbye, but I was so emotional, words could not come. I wanted the impossible thing, to go with you. I don't understand all those happenings, but it seems like something sacred. 60 years has not destroyed whatever it is. Who knows what the next 60 will bring? My family loves you, and Mark thinks you should come and share my home. I let Nola and Jenny read your letter, and we all had a good cry. I never doubted your love. Just some things that never happened. Yours always, Vonola. So it was an amazing story, and not only the papers picked up on it, but they were featured in Ripley's Believe It or Not. So here you see it says Zella and Victor McPartland, prevented by their parents from marrying as teenagers in Fernand, Nevada in 1917, met again when she was 81 and he was 84. They married December 3rd, 1981, after 64 years. Pretty cool. And Zella and Victor were happily married for 10 years until his death. There's a picture over here with, here he is with Mark and Dolores and a friend in Tijuana. You know, they made use of being close to the border. She continued to live with her son Mark until 1994, when she came to live with daughter Nola in Connecticut. Vonola Fairbanks Modine McPartland died there on May 19, 1995. But her descendants include 11 grandchildren, 27 great-grandchildren, and 14 great-great-grandchildren and growing.